Hi everybody, this is the third video in the series on the unification of science. As we've seen in videos 1 and 2, the fragmentation of science is not caused by any of the science. It's caused by language problems. Right at the heart of classical physics, our first real physics, gravity and electromagnetism are inconsistent, which means the Earth as a gravitational body and its field is inconsistent with the Earth as a magnetic body and its field. And we saw in the first video the problem was the word curvature of space-time, because there is none. And I thought of a very good example to demonstrate this. It's a well-known experiment called the monkey and the hunter. You'll see it on YouTube, demonstrated very, very well. There's a monkey hanging from a branch and a hunter at the same level. The monkey's looking at the hunter and sees a flash from a gun and leaves the branch, lets go of the branch and drops straight down density gradient of gravity, straight down. Where's the curvature? There isn't any. The bullet from the gun also falls under the same density gradient, so it falls at the same rate. But it also has the propellant, the charge, pushing it forward at the same time. So it moves in a curve and hits the monkey. The bullet does not follow a curved path in space, just as the planets do not follow curved paths in space. The curvature is on the models we make to make a ball roll into the middle of a model. That is complete nonsense. Think with a monkey. And then we went over to electromagnetism and see that we've got the same language problem, because magnetism is called a fundamental force. Now if I go over to classical mechanics, levers, gears, hydraulics, I exchange force for length or rotation or area, and it needs physical contact. But there is no physical contact between the Earth and the Moon, or between a compass needle. It just aligns with the density of the field. So we've got the same word, force, for a relationship between physical matter and space, and physical matter and physical matter. You can't have that. We've got to change something. So I'm going to suggest, and it's only a suggestion, that we leave the word force for classical mechanics, and that we have something different for gravitational bodies and fields, magnetic bodies and fields, electrical bodies and fields. So why not classical field theory as opposed to quantum field theory? We see a pattern. One centre of gravity, two magnetic poles, three electrical vectors, and the quantum field theory, quantum scale, the property of mass, magnetic moments in pairs, and electrical charge as a triplet, -1, 0, +1. So as soon as we state classical field theory as the three relationships between physical matter and space, we get consistent information. There has to be a conversation between space and physical matter. There has to be the exchange of information, and we can use that as a universal agent of change. Now this video, we're going to move on from physics, and we're going to look at chaos and how that aligns with physics, into complexity, systems, self-assembling, self-organizing systems. So if you're a systems thinker, this one's for you. And you have to start with the simplest self-organizing system, the solar system. It's a very accurate clock that made itself. But what's the mechanism? There must be a blind watchmaker. But what is it? And it's not in physics. So it's very important to clear this up. We've got quantum physics, so the atoms in this pencil. We've also got an object, classical physics. Lots of physics at the same time. And if I cut that pencil up and make it into a little chaotic pendulum, I've got 3 sets of fundamental laws at the same time. Quantum physics. The arms of the chaotic pendulum still behave as levers, classical physics. And then I move on. Chaotic physics? That's for us to decide. The length of the arms in the chaotic pendulum are constantly changing relative to each other. So the behavior which emerges comes from the relation between the components, not properties of the components. Completely different. So when I get into turbulence and chaos, everything changes. So the solar system, I need the explanation of all those 3 kinds of behavior. The quantum physics that's making the sun light up, that holds it in place. Gravitational bodies and fields, magnetic bodies and fields, sunspots. And then the turbulence and the clouds on Jupiter. That's all got to be accounted for. And those 3 fundamental sets of laws do account for them. I'm saying chaos is fundamental because it does not emerge from classical physics. It's a completely different set of mathematical rules which are independent of physical structure. Independent. It doesn't matter if it's a physical system, a chemical system, electrical system, an optical system, a biological system. Chaos shows up in them all. And it doesn't matter if it's some biology or turbulence in a fluid. You get the same mathematics coming at you. So what about the solar system? How does it become a self-organizing, self-assembling clock? Well, if I look at the moons of Jupiter, there's 3 of them are in a 4-to-1 ratio. Now the 4, the 2 and the 1 goes around 4 times, at the same time 1 goes around twice, at the same time 1 goes around once, and they all line up. They harmonize. That's very important. The 4, the 2 and the 1 are not properties of the moons, properties of components, physics. They emerge from relationships between the components which, unlike chaotic systems, have 2 extra bits of behavior. 1, the conservation of information. The solar system conserves information. Sound familiar in biology? The conservation of information. Every movement in the solar system is recorded in the movement of something else. If you move Jupiter, everything else moves. That's really important. And the harmonization of the system, it has to be in a frictionless medium. A system that harmonizes. Now what's very important is that the mechanism of harmonization can only take place if there's a very large stabilizing body at the center of the system. If the parts of a system are all the same size in space, they're completely chaotic. But if you have a giant sun and tiny planets, gas giants and tiny moons with rings and moons all harmonize, and every gas giant is the same pattern as the whole, the sun, the asteroid belt, the tiny planets all harmonized, and there are gaps in the asteroid belt called the Kirkwood gaps, just the same as the rings of Saturn. It's harmonization and stabilization. Does that occur at the atomic level? Is there a stabilizing body in the middle of the system and harmonized entities on the outside? Electron orbital shells. There is. It's very important that we now look at this, and we look at things like biology, because when you look at the solar system and see it's a clock that you can calculate eclipses decades into the future, it's not random. So if the simplest physical, self-assembling, self-organizing system is not random, then biology is not random. Cannot be. In the lifetime of the known universe, you would not get a single protein due to random processes, not one. So there's an active mechanism which is driving matter up a diversity gradient. It's always becoming more diverse, and there are diversity switches built into the universe to make that happen, increase diversity. The first one is what makes stars light up, and it's the fact that the proton can switch into a neutron, and you can make all the elements, increasing diversity. If that switch doesn't take place, stars don't get switched on. Diversity switches. They're all over biology. Protons and neutrons. We separate matter into two different kinds and get a big increase in diversity and complexity. Does that happen in biology? Asexual. Male and female. Incredible increase in diversity. It's something I've always wondered. Could that explain the Cambrian explosion? A sudden increase in diversity and complexity. There's nothing else. But I'm not an evolutionary biologist. So we need some input from them. What about the Cambrian explosion? And matter switching from protons into protons and neutrons, asexual to male and female. We've got to think about this. It really is important to get all this cleared up. Now I've drawn out and mapped a model of nature as a complexity gradient, starting with the self-assembly of stars, spheres, and elements which come from prime numbers, the numbers 2 and 3, first two prime numbers, because before you can make helium, you first have to make deuterium and tritium, 2 and 3. And you make the first composite number, 4, and the first composite element, helium, 2 times 2, 2 protons, 2 neutrons. Arithmetic and geometry assembling each other. Very important that we pay attention to this. At base, the universe is a mathematical structure. Before there are stars and elements, there are just amorphous clouds of hydrogen. That's it. So we really do need a rethink. We need to start again from scratch. Now the complexity gradient, if you roll it out, it's 10 meters long, starts with stars and elements and ends up in the Industrial Revolution, which is based on the first two prime numbers 2 and 3, and the Information Revolution, which is based on numbers 2 and 3. Now if you want to see that, or you'd like a copy of it, if you leave your email in the comments, I'm going to give away the first 10 complexity gradients for free. It's a giant, periodic, repeating pattern, a model of nature which is all consistent, consistent language, consistent mathematics, and consistent scientific principles. Who wouldn't want to see that? I'll see you next time.